Hello, everyone. Dr. Nikhil Verma here with another edition of Things I Didn't Learn in Med School. Today, I want to talk about a topic that came up last weekend, and this is about physicians, residents, fellows, medical students advocating for yourself for your transitions to career or going into changing careers or looking into a new practice or looking into a new job at a hospital system. Let me tell you about what brought this about. I have a family friend who is currently doing her fellowship, and um, she and I have been talking back and forth for the past few months, just like bouncing ideas of the landscape of medicine, et cetera, et cetera. We don't talk all that often, but we do every now and then just catch up. Well, I had happened to be at a event a couple weeks ago, and I was speaking with some folks at that event, and there's a physician there who owns her own practice and is specialty practice. So I was talking to her, I was like, "Hey, how's it going? How's everything with staffing, um, et cetera, et cetera?" And she's like, "My partner, she just kind of ended up leaving a few months ago, and I've had a hard time trying to refill that position. I've interviewed a few people, but there's no good fits. People don't even want to do this kind of medicine anymore." I said, "No, I get it. It's tough out there, and with the physician burnout and all that stuff." And she's like, "That's exactly what it was. The physician was just burnt out and wanted to go do something else." Um, so, nonetheless, the fellowship that my family friend is doing happens to be the same field of medicine. So I ultimately text her and said, "Hey, I think you should talk to this person. I'm not sure what your plans are in the future, but you should definitely give them, just talk to them, et cetera, et cetera." Uh, the response that I got was a little shocking. She goes, "Well, I really don't know what I want to do in my future. I really probably won't look for jobs until early or towards next year because it's a 2-year fellowship." And I'm like, "Okay, let's pause there for a second." Um, and maybe I shouldn't respond the exact way I did, but I said, and this is what I said to her. I'm like, "Listen, here's some sound advice. No one is going to advocate for you as much as you advocate for yourself. And if you're not proactive about these things, then you're going to be sitting here searching for a job the last minute, and you're just going to settle for a job that you may not feel is right for you, but you didn't take the proactive steps at the beginning to help yourself out." And there's multiple reasons why I said this. One reason is this friend of mine, her father, again, family friend, he had a very successful private practice, and he was able to do a lot of research and open a research firm, a research arm associated with his practice. And he was very successful. He still is very successful for 30 plus years. Well, um, so we'll say 25 years, give or take. I don't know exactly the time frame, but he ended up getting bought out by a bigger hospital system in the area. And as that transition was going on, he lost his best and favorite physician um, assistant, his best PA. He lost his best medical assistant, and he lost one of his front desk people who'd been working with him for multiple years, all to the bigger hospital system. The hospital system plucked them out and put them in different places because they knew how hard working they were and how well educated they were, et cetera, et cetera. So essentially, this guy lost his 3 best employees. So that's one thing. He then is seeing more patients for less compensation, and he gets dinged by the hospital system if he's not referring patients within the hospital system. So he's lost a lot of autonomy of how he likes to practice medicine, how he likes to do things. So I used her father as an example to her. It's like, look what happened to him. Like, he's lost a lot. And, it's not that he didn't advocate for himself, because I know he still does, but, he was stuck in a situation that he had to end up selling to the bigger hospital system because that's how it was structured. So that's one thing to think about is, this is happening nationwide where, independent practices and smaller groups are getting swallowed up by these big organizations, big hospital systems, and this is decreasing the autonomy that we have. Especially with these Medicare cuts that are coming up, I would just want to read it because I had a colleague of mine, Alan Nguyen, who was talking about this on his social media platforms. Physicians are going to see a total cut of almost 8.5% in Medicare payments under the 2023 physician fee schedule. So that's really bringing down 4% of work on top of another 4% based off of Congress's new pay-as-you-go rules. On top of that, we're in the middle of not a full-blown recession, but we're definitely in an economic downturn. It might be considered a recession. I think it probably is by the definition of the word, but we're seeing inflation rates that we haven't seen for 20 plus years, and it continues to go up. We don't know when the end of it is. So if you're not advocating for yourself now, what's going to happen in the future? You're going to take just a big paycheck and you're going to be not happy in that job. The hospital systems have the benefit to use employees and even physicians as either salary or they work on an RVU basis. And we can talk about RVUs at another time. It's pretty complex. We actually had a long conversation with my colleagues about it this past week. But, those RVU basis points don't hold as much weight when all the leverage power is within the hospital. And if these Medicare fees are going down, that means that your RVU rate is going to go down too. And I don't think people realize that because it's multiplied by a conversion factor. And that's what the Medicare or Medicaid group is CMS is coming down with. So that was another second point that I'm trying to another point I'm trying to get out across to her and to you out there. Following up with that one, I have a colleague who graduated his fellowship in July, end of June. So he made his trek out to Arizona from New York to start his career. Well, it's been now 4 months, and he still isn't credentialed with all the payers. He still doesn't have a contract in hand where he can see patients and make money. So he really has to take a loan to cover that gap. This is on top of his medical student loans, on top of all the other loans he has, undergrad, any car loans, et cetera, et cetera. So that's another thing. Like, it's not one of these things that you should think about 6 months before you graduate, 8 months before. You should really be thinking about this at least 1 year in advance. And when I say think about it, I'm just saying think about it. Talk to people, get advice, think about where you want to live, think about where you want to go. You don't want to be caught without a paycheck for several months and nothing to do. I mean, we're so used to being busy all the time. And then when you're not busy, all of a sudden it's easy to get slipped up into a depressive state or into an anxious state where you're like, what do I do now? I'm just sitting here waiting and I can't practice medicine because I'm waiting for payer contracts. So you don't want to do that to yourself. You do not want to be in that situation. He has talked to me about it and how frustrated he's trying to look for other things to do. He's been driving Lyft. He's been doing Grubhub delivery. It's just all these things, DoorDash delivery, sorry. But all these things, but that's not what he went to school for. That's not what he trained for. That's not his passion. It's good to pay some bills every now and then, but he still has living off these loans and racking up debt. It's very, very sad that people don't realize that there's a process of onboarding and getting involved into the contracting with specific plans, payer plans. So that's another major point that I wanted to bring up is why we should advocate for ourselves. Now, I am saying, and I'm a firm believer that no one is going to advocate for ourselves better than we do. But there is something to be said. There are people out there, there are groups out there that will help on your behalf. There are contract reviewing companies that have lawyers and staff that can help review your contracts and make sure you're in the right position. I use Contract Diagnostics when I was initially taking my fellowship job and then looking into my future jobs as well, which actually saved me lots of money, lots of headache, and go about that in another way. Ended up not taking a job because they found a lot of loopholes in their language, and I asked them to change it, and they said no. So I said, all right, probably not the job for me. Doc Nation is a company founded by my friend Anthony Jafrida, and he is really advocating for the physicians on the physician's behalf. Essentially, his ideal avatar of a client, or how we work together, is getting physicians in the position to have someone negotiate on their behalf. So just like a NFL football player has an agent to go negotiate those contracts, it takes it out of the physician's hands, and it goes a step beyond the contract diagnostics, where it just reads it and then you go advocate yourself. But they're literally going to have an agent picking up the phone, talking to the people, and bringing back and forth. All right, this is what my client wants. If you can't see that way, then there's not a deal that's going to be had here. I think it's an important concept, and this is only going to work if we start banding together and getting power together in numbers. So I highly recommend, if you are a physician advocate or a health wellness advocate, you want to go sign up for Doc Nation, and just sign up, and then let's see how this unfolds. I'm really looking forward to it. They also have teamed up with Physicians Thrive, who is another company that I do use. So just we'll do a side note there. None of these companies are compensating me for saying any of this. This is straight up from what I've experienced and what I use. Use it if you like it. If it's not for you, that's completely fine on my book. Just want to show there's no other foul play besides stuff that I've been using in my own realm. So Physicians Thrive is another company that I use for fellowship to manage some of my disability insurance. But they have such a long ledger and so long list of things that they're able to help you out with. So if this is the kind of stuff that you feel like you need help with, which I know almost all of us do, please go and talk to them as well. They can do contract diagnosis and contract reviews. They can do disability insurance. They can do financial planning. They have a whole laundry list of things that they can help out with, and they've just partnered with a bigger company. I believe, I don't know exactly the details, but I hear it's going to be awesome for them to help the leverage power overall. The other thing I want to talk about is, and this is kind of related, and the third point is, when we are out there, we should always be practicing our skills. And this is a big thing I wanted to talk to my friend about as well. It's like, you should go say yes to this interview for so many reasons, but the top few that come to mind are, you're going to practice interview skills. You're going to practice knowing what to say yes and no to. Number two, you're going to understand what the market's like. You're going to understand what kind of a private practice pays versus a hospital pays. You're going to learn a different part of medicine that you never actually learned before. You never know if that person is going to introduce you to the next big thing or the next big person that's going to help your career. So even if that job isn't for you and there's a mutual, hey, this isn't for me, hey, I get it, you never know who that person is going to introduce you to. And this has happened to me multiple times over. At least 3 times this year I can count on that. I've talked to a company or I've talked to an individual about a product or something, and that didn't work well for me, but they were immediately, hey, I had, conversation with Dr. Verma last night. I think he and you would get along really well. You never know when that's going to happen, and that can escalate your career. You can escalate your income. It can escalate your peace of mind, so much more. So, that was another big point I was trying to get. And even now, even though I have my own practice, I don't turn down a lot of, take it back, I do turn down a lot of interviews, but I still try to keep them sharp. So maybe once a year, I will pick up the phone and say, yeah, let me talk to them and see if that's what I want to do. I always say yes to opportunities like that. I always say yes to opportunities that, is there room for collaboration? Is there room for expansion? Not only is it better for me, because if I hit a home run and find someone that collaborates on an appropriate level, then it's going to be win-win. But if it's not a win-win, or don't see eye to eye, or for whatever reason, then it's like, hey, this isn't for me. I appreciate you coming up to me, but like, let's try to maybe figure out a future way to work together. So that's another big thing to think about, especially when you're early in your career, when you have all these opportunities. I've seen multiple times where a physician has been doing the same thing for 20, 30 years, and then the landscape of medicine has changed so much in that time frame that they're not able to do the things that they want to do. And they're not able to keep up. So they're either forced into early retirement, which actually my friend's father is considering now, or they're just stuck in a job where they're making less and less money year after year after year until, they have enough in their retirement account to retire. And usually that's well beyond the years that they wanted to be working in the first place. So you always have to be adaptive to the environment around you. Anyways, so that's pretty much what I want to talk about today. That was the big talking point that I had with my friends, and hopefully that she understands where I'm coming from. But when I see her face to face, I'll probably explain a little bit this more. But if you have questions, comments, drop them in the comment section below. If you have other topics that you'd like me to discuss, please send me a message, email me, find me on social media, and we can talk more. Apologize, the past few months I've been a little bit busy. I haven't been able to get as many of these out, but my goal is to do at least one a week, whether it be the longer format or shorter formats of less than 20 minutes. That's probably going to be my goal going forward. I know I've been talking a while to get guests on here. Haven't got around to that quite yet, but hopefully I'll be doing that sometime once I understand how the social media stuff works a little bit more. So anyways, I hope you guys have a good day. If you have any questions, feel free to drop me a comment. Take care.